Welcome to the, I think, fuck it, like the fifth episode maybe of the Fleming Chronicles. I kind of lost count. I took a break. Couldn't really be bothered. I lied to a couple of people and said I didn't want to tire the guests out, but no, I just couldn't be bothered. Today I'm joined by Jack Fletcher Belcher, um, joint owner of ICL and EireLan, and also a moderator in the very popular in the Irish scene UKIC Face It Hub. Jack, how's it going?
It's going well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Had vegetarian spaghetti, marble or meatballs. I don't know why we call it marbles, but just before we get into everything, why is your username Fletcher? Obviously, a bit of it is the Belcher.
That is a banger of a question, actually. So when I was like 10, 11, back on RuneScape, old school RuneScape, we had a race to 99, a race to 100, I think it was. And I won by fletching arrows. So there you go.
Oh, I had a couple of friends who played RuneScape. I never got into it. I'm like one of these elitists about graphics, and I
Yeah,
can't be bothered with all that shit. Like,
used to love it, honestly.
yeah, and that's why now you've got your wrist fucking wrapped up because of all that crap.
Oh, hell yeah.
So we'll start it the same way. I kind of start all of them just because people like to talk about it, and it kind of helps me know if people like, because obviously you don't really play as much nowadays.
Yeah.
As you said off recording, but I know a lot of people do, and it sort of helps me keep up to date with who's doing what and how good and how not they are in certain cases. So when and how did you sort of get started? Like just playing normal Counter Strike, not the competitive scene as such.
Oh, I was about 6 and my cousins, and I played from about 6 on. I played 1.2, 1.4, all Counter Strike. There used to be a map of my actual living it, like my estate, pretty much, and that was how I started getting into it. I kind of dropped off during Source, and then 2012 reordered Counter Strike, and that was kind of it.
Just came back in with Go. Who the fuck made
Yeah.
a map of your estate?
It was so I went to my cousin's house, and it was actually his dad who
Oh
used to do
shit.
it. Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, that's pretty
But
sick. I suppose it helped you with all the angles and stuff like that. Were you
yeah,
anytime you walked out your front door though, were you like expecting to be shot or something
head
on the
down.
street?
Yeah, yeah. Made
Uh,
sure I had my head down and whatnot. It was good.
yeah, thank God. See if I was doing that. See if I had lived in Belfast when I was younger and I had a map of my estate. Nah, mate,
No,
I would have been
wouldn't
moving.
go down well. Yeah.
Nah, definitely not. So at what point did you start to transition from that into like meeting other Irish or UK players and doing tournaments and shit like that?
That's kind of another mad one. So, my main game at the time, I'm saying like maybe 2014, 2015, whatever. My main game was League of Legends, and on the front of the League client, there was a G series, League of Legends LAN thing. So, and my friend is like decent at League, so he went to it, and I went with him. And there was CS at it, turns out. So about a week before the event, if you know Cinder,
Yes,
like
yeah, I've been
decent.
slapped by him a couple of times. Yeah.
He threw me a message on Facebook. It was like, look, like I put a post in being like, look, if anybody needs like a shit player to come to LAN, I'm there. And yeah, he threw me a message, and that was kind of the start of that. Like,
So you started
but
with Cinder. Was it any of the other Nobody's Boys there, or was it just Cinder at that point?
that lineup was Cinder, Enline, a guy called Carino, if you know him.
Nah, I
Um,
don't think so.
kind of plays his UK guy anyway, and a guy called Mark Affo. And that was that lineup. We dogged it, but it got me into the scene. So yeah,
At, mate, that's a running theme to be honest. That people just seem to instantly like get clapped at their first LAN, and then
yeah,
the classic MSL. We will come back stronger and learn from this.
yeah. That was good though. Like it was more so like I didn't really care at that time. Didn't care for the competitive side of things. It was more the community feel,
Yeah,
and that's kind of like what that was 6 odd years ago. That's kind of what we're trying to return to now, in a sense. You know what I mean? So it's full circle.
yeah, slowly but surely, especially in our beloved Irish scene.
Yeah, exactly that.
God, I die a little bit inside every time I say something like that. Yeah, so that was sort of, was that was over in the UK then, wasn't it? Yeah, obviously.
G series.
Yeah.
No, that was
The
Centre Dublin.
fuck's wrong with my? Yeah, mate, that was way before I think I ever fucking touched this. So I was
Yeah.
just going off like the Gfinity stuff, but I did, obviously
Oh
there are two
yeah.
separate entities. Then, no, what was the scene like back in those days? Like, was there more lands, or was it just
There
like,
was two G series a year for maybe 2 years. And then kind of Raid and McDara.
I've
Basically
heard his
Raid
name?
now was G series. Do you know what I mean? To a degree, I'm pretty sure the same admins basically. Um, Scene was a lot smaller, like a lot smaller, and there's a handful of players that were around back then that are now,
Yeah.
but it was a comfy feel in
Yeah,
a sense.
was it smaller in terms of overall player base, or was it smaller in terms of like tournaments and stuff like that?
No, so we actually had a lot of tournaments back then, um, but there was like a period in like 2017, 2018 where it kind of just died off.
Oh
Yeah, the
yeah,
way Irish team does that, it revives itself. But no, yeah, there was a lot less players, a lot average older players, which is weird because they come from Source and 1.6 and stuff like that, and they're all gone now. But
yeah.
that it was nice. There was a lot more tournaments, a lot less players, so it was easier.
Yeah, easier to actually get through because I remember there was one tournament that had an online qualifier. I think actually yeah, for the qualifying match, I was in Tenerife at the time, so we had to use a substitute, and he was some absolute god gamer Portuguese player, and I
Yeah,
believe the team had like Calvo in it, and they might have beat a team that you were a part of. And
could
I
have.
think it was said that, obviously he was much better than me. So it had to be replayed with a player of similar skill or forfeit or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that was very sad. I think that's the only time I've thought, who's this fucking bastard Fletcher bringing up these
Like,
goddamn rules?
back in the day, I was a prick, so
I
still
mean,
am.
to be fair, I would have been very fucking tempted to do the exact same. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? There's that little lands on this island that you really have to like fight for your
push.
spot in a way. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's like back in the day when German teams used to be like, "Is that team recording their demo? Oh, they're not
yeah.
recording their demo. Good, disqualified. We were doing it the whole time, sort of thing."
Still happens nowadays, sure.
I hadn't heard that, but you know what? I'm keeping my ear close to the ground these last couple of weeks, so definitely. So you kind of talked about it dying a little bit there. What do you think has revitalized it again? So, well, revitalized might be a strong word, but what
Mm.
brought us back from the dark ages of 2017, 2018? Because that's whenever I dropped out, definitely.
So, like, this is not to toot my own horn here, but late 2016 was GamerCon.
Yeah.
After GamerCon, let's not talk about actual GamerCon because that was, with all due respect, a shit show. But after GamerCon, me, Dean, and Nyreen, a Swedish fella, went out drinking, and we came up with the idea of ICL. And I genuinely do think a mix of Ice and ICL coming out at the same rough period gave people that drive, gave people like, oh look, I can be top of the scene, or I can play with other Irish lads. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that really gave people motivation to come back and play within the scene. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
because that's something I've noticed. Like, I claim to sort of also be, part of the UK scene, but that's obviously just living in Northern Ireland. I've went to a couple of series, but I've never done anything there. I'll never claim to have done
Yeah,
anything there. But I find people are very nationalistic, might be the right word, but they're very proud of being part of the Irish scene. So I do
yeah,
think the ability to just play with other Irish people is definitely a big driving factor within the scene.
hmm
Um, which might explain people's issues with other things that we may encroach on further in the
I was just
conversation.
gonna further that point. I think I would say it was more patriotic, but to a certain degree, that's detrimental because I do know a lot of players that will play within their scene, and when the thought of a bigger and better scene and bigger prize pools comes up, the thought of that, but they have to play with different countries, they will kick up a fuss. You know what I mean? I think playing with your own scene is nice, but if you really, really have the drive, to get up there, you gotta open up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, like I would give that to Drags a little bit as well because although
Like,
he's playing a little bit more in ICL nowadays, he was like in was one of the first higher profile players in our scene, especially to jump
Hmm.
over to UKIC to try to, whether it's a gimmick or not, and I know you'll probably say it's not a gimmick. I've yet to see yet, but the whole endpoint like scouting and academy thing.
Yeah,
Obviously he's one of the players in our scene that could definitely avail of that. Um,
yeah. Well,
but
he's hit. Sorry
no,
to
that's
cut you
right.
off there. He's hit Pro League now. Qualify. He's hit qualifiers for Pro League twice, and like it's not an easy thing to do. You know, it's
Yeah, yeah.
like a lot of consistent skill, and like it's great to see that coming from an Irish player. And I think there's so many more who could, but just aren't open enough to trying. If you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
think that's.
and it's a strange one. I suppose it's because like the players with more skill, especially in our scene, get some say. Um,
Mhm.
Obviously, we don't have to go into specifics, but there were probably some players that thought because of their personality and because of their skill could do whatever they wanted, and obviously within the last couple of weeks we found that's not necessarily the case. But I think it's because of that sway that they think they have in their own minds that a lot of people won't go over, because realistically, who the fuck are some of these people in the UK? They're no one in the greater context, like.
Yeah, I will say like the PL the PL getting scouted from PL is a hard thing to do, and it's eh, it's a very low chance, but it's a start. You know what I mean?
It's something.
Yeah, because the likes of Endpoint represent are doing well for themselves. You know what I mean? And if you get scouted, if you manage by this like slim chance to get scouted, then you're on Endpoint Academy, and that's a HLTV profile for yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's my goal. So like HLTV profile, and I can die happy is where I'm at.
Realistically, it's anyone's fucking goal. Like, I remember whenever was it NSG back in the day? They were either on HLTV, but they definitely appeared, I think, on like the front page of CS:GO for like an upcoming match or something like that.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
remember the scenes on Twitter. It was like the greatest thing since sliced bread. People were jumping in the air and clicking their heels together, going fucking
yeah.
mental. And it's
We've
like,
made it. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's all people want, is like to be recognized slightly bigger in the scene, which is obviously why something like this is quite useful, because it gets people's
mhm,
vibrant and non-toxic personalities out into a greater popularity.
yeah. Hopefully, anyway, it clears up all that. Like, but
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's one thing too. We could probably, well, I was gonna make a greater point, but I'll wait till later. But we can
sure.
actually get started into, so that was a great transition, although we did completely miss it out. That idea of you sitting in a bar, having a drink with a couple of people, and then thinking of the idea for ICL. Um,
Hmm.
was it just to have Irish people playing with other Irish people?
Yeah. So it started on legit. It was like so that because we GLAN G Series GLAN had
Yeah,
slowed down, and like there was one a year, maybe one every 2 years at that stage, and we were like, well, shit, this is not only it doesn't like the scene is dying, but it's also an opening for something that could be a constant. Do you know what I mean? And lands are fun, but the likes of ICL is like a constant 24-hour thing where if you want to go play with Irish people, you can.
yeah,
And it's the same feeling as a LAN to a degree because you're hanging out with the lads, you're playing with the lads. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, sorry, I got lost there.
No, no, that's kind of what ends up happening on these things. Like, you can just go off on tangents. I don't really give a shit. I'm just happy for the human interaction, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
No, so, and then, as I think everyone in the scene knows, ICL has a tendency to sort of die and come back and die and come back. But this, like, and that almost goes hand in hand with people's college schedules. Um,
Exactly.
Definitely, because I think that's been said on a previous one. But I think the last time it was revitalized was maybe a little bit different, because I noticed there was like a new Twitter handle. I know the same Faceit Hub got reused, but
Mhm.
it's sort of been like a new feel almost. Why was that intentional, or did it just sort of happen that way?
Yeah, so for me, like it's 2021 now. I've been running it since 2016, late 2016, and it's been up and down, just because of stuff we can't control. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like college season comes, college season goes. Um, but this last time, it actually came back. Like, because if you look on, like, you could map out when it's going to die and when it's going to come back. This last time it came back at when it shouldn't have. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And it was actually caused by some beef, um, which I don't know about. I wasn't there, but that's what all the lads said. It was caused by some beef going on in ice.
Okay.
And we were like, well, shit, it's come back off season. So either we get our off season and a full on season here, and hopefully people will see we're trying. You know what I mean? So what
Yeah.
I did was I sat down with Ruben and Incipiens, and I'm gonna forget names, but a few other lads. I was like, let's do this. Let's send this. Let's deddy, you know, 3 head admins or 1 head admin, 3 admins, and get a staff team to cover every angle. That's kind of what we did. We went, got like graphics made up, stuff like this, just to make it feel more professional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like Pop Flash. You know, before in a sense it was like Pop Flash where, you know, the boys are on, let's pug or let's 10 man. But now it's like, you know, it's ICL.
Yeah, and it's easier to keep track of when you have people looking for a game and stuff like that. Um,
Exactly that.
and yeah, like the Discord as well is quite popular. Which obviously leads to certain issues. I guess it must be kind of hard to keep on top of everything that's happening, but you know,
Yeah,
that's just going hand in hand. Some would say that's a milestone of success almost.
exactly. That's how I see it.
Yeah, so well done. But then there was a recent couple months ago, an announcement made that you guys were starting up EireLan, you and Ruben, primarily as like the owners, of it. What was the sort of idea that made you? Because it kind of went hand in hand with the twit longer of, you know, we're stepping back and sort of handing more of the decision, not the decision, but the day-to-day running of things over to incipients. What was the reasoning behind like such a huge leap as opposed to just doing lands with ICL whenever things return to normal?
Yeah, so I saw, like, we actually had this conversation amongst the staff team not too long ago. Back in day one, I always saw ICL as an online thing. I mean, we tried so many, like, you know, ICL, ICL Premier. We tried splitting the divisions. We tried doing all this. And the only thing that people really reacted to was ICL. You know what I mean? No messing about, no splitting the divisions, none of this. It's ICL, it's a face it, hope we pug. So what we then thought was like, okay, let's make a sister company and same player base, use the same, you know, advertising space, the same staff team, and let's send it for like online qualifiers and in real life events. So that means if needs be, we have a dedicated staff team for both in a sense,
Yeah.
and it also doesn't complicate. Um, that's not really anything else to complicate. That's kind of it. Yeah, there is plans for it. So ICL will actually be doing. So we want to do. The problem with the scene is there's not that many players at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So if we go ahead and do ICL or we do EireLan, um, it kind of will drag players away from playing ICL. Like not all of them, but people will be pracking a lot more. People are doing this a lot more. So I think, don't know if I should be teasing this, but the goal down the line is to have an EL. So EL being Ireland is gonna be bigger prize full. You know what I mean? Well, no, we're
Yeah.
gonna actually. The plan is to focus on studio end. So there will be live viewers, whatever, people coming to the LAN, but we're gonna focus on studio end. So we're gonna get, you know, nice cameras, nice, basically a nice streamer setup,
Yeah.
and kind of have it for online, and kind of hope that it brings attention to the Irish scene. You know what I mean? In a grander scheme, because we have the likes of Anders really helping us out, like Anders Bloom.
Yeah.
He's really helping us out at the moment with anything we need, doing God's work. And if we can kind of make the Irish scene a lot more public, even we could even get a following. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it will open us up more to being invited to the likes of the, you know, international events for the likes of UMX. Like if you've
Yeah.
seen
Yeah.
UMX, they peaked at 87th in the world last week, which is ridiculous to me for a ton of boys in the sticks. It's
Yeah, who aren't even contracted, might I add, which raises my own concerns that they're representing a team very, very well. That
exactly
they
just
might
imagine the possibility.
yeah, yeah, exactly. If they were nailed down with some concrete benefits to being in that. But anyway, that's probably a separate issue. I could
Yeah,
rant on about for a while, but
yeah. No, but end of the day, we're basically going to have EL, very studio refined, good lands for teams, possibly a few invite teams
Irish
down the line.
majors,
Essentially,
pretty
yeah.
much.
And then ICL will actually basically we're going to host some events under ICL, and that will then be a normal LAN, just like OTL, like G Series back in the day, where it's a normal LAN, the boys, whatever,
Yeah,
same prizes, but it will be a feeder LAN for EL. Now, the first EL is going to just be a normal LAN because
yeah,
we want to get logistics and whatnot. But down the line, it will be basically ICL will be feeding into EL, and kind of have that invite feel. You know what I mean? Where people are really putting in work. It's more so it'll motivate everybody.
yeah,
So everybody has the chance to play in it. You know what I mean? It's not like a closed thing, but it will be kind of it'll get people motivated.
yeah. Oh, hold on, I had a question. Oh, yeah, yeah. So it'll sort of help, I suppose. Will the ICL lands and maybe online tournaments help you seed the EireLans quite a bit better? Because I know that's an issue that's came up recently, especially in ice, is sort of the seeding, maybe due to lack of tournaments being run. Will that sort of help you like prepare and sort whenever you are doing
Yeah,
the ELs?
exactly. It gives us kind of. I'm not. This is going to come across badly, but it's not meant that way. The ICL feeder line will almost give us a tester. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
In
yeah,
a sense that okay, we see who's doing well, we see who's sticking together, we see who's winning first, second, third, fourth, and yeah, we'll be able to place people in EL a lot more accurately. Alongside, as I said to you off camera, I think the Codex that
yeah.
Patton, I think it was Patton, was running
I
back in the day.
believe it was, yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to bring that back and keep, copies of people's stats that they can show off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it'd be nice.
Do you think that it could like you can just tell me to shut the fuck up and I'll let it out? But do you think it could risk what's the best way of phrasing it? Whenever One Tap was charging slightly higher entrance fees so they could do better prize pools or better
Mhm.
like, overall running of the thing, do you think that you may run into the possibility of oversaturating the lands and asking people because realistically in their eyes, yes, EL will be better produced and all, but they're still
Yeah.
paying to go and play Counter Strike. Do you think you'll be asking them to pay too many times a year,
No,
potentially?
so I do think because originally EL was going to be twice a year. Like back when me and Ruben kind of we only announced it, let's say a month, but we've been thinking about it months now, like
Yeah.
just under a year. And originally it was going to be EL twice a year. End of story. You know what I mean? In my head, the ideal situation would be the exact same. You know the way One Tap was run. It was run early year. I can't remember the month. I think it
Yeah,
was
yeah, like
March, and
yeah,
then
like
October.
March. Yeah.
Yeah, March and October, and that would be ICL in March, EL in October. Same kind of idea. So it'll be two lands a year. The issue, if we are comparing to OTL, is OTL is Belfast.
Yeah.
Um, getting accommodation and whatnot is cheaper in the likes of Belfast. In Dublin, we would obviously host on a college campus, so there would be something we could sort out. But at the end of the day, the tickets themselves, the price is hard to say because we haven't discussed that yet,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
But I do see it as it might be slightly more than the likes of OTL had, but there will be more to that's the word. There'll be
Uh
more at a LAN, these lands, I think, because we have a lot prepared, if you know what I mean.
yeah, yeah. I'll like personally because I'm level-headed, not entitled. I really like the idea of that. Because I would understand where the money's going.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, one problem I saw One Tap run into was a lot of people are like, "I'm paying more. Why isn't the prize pool more?" And it's like, obviously there is a slightly proportional relationship between the two. When one goes up, the other is expected to go up a certain amount.
Yeah.
But do you think that players will appreciate the better production value and the potentially more eyes on it, or do you think they'll just see my money's not going to the prize pool? What the fuck's going on here, Fletch?
Yeah, so we've had this somewhat problem in ICL. And it's like, ICL is a lot easier to handle because all we have to cover sometimes is server costs and
Yeah,
a skin. But I think if production value is there, it gives people, oh, what is the word? An online CV in a
yeah, yeah,
sense, you know
yeah,
what I mean? An online CV to be like, well, look, we're paying this much, we're getting this much. It's still a prize pool, which is not going to be low. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Realistically, I would say 90% of ticket fees will be the prize pool. And then the rest will have to, obviously, for the first before sponsors, will have to cover venue and whatnot.
Yeah.
But if we have studio production quality, I personally adore the fact, like I remember at One Tap, I had a few clips and mate, they're plastered around everywhere. You know what I mean? And if you could leave a LAN lost, but like you have a few clips, it is always a positive thing. And I think bringing a studio quality setup to a LAN, I don't think anybody would be against, especially if it's just a little bit more than typical. But then again, like we're not sure on ticket prices; they could be cheaper for ICL.
Yeah, of course. I suppose, yeah, it depends where you're looking to run it, as you said. I personally, a little bit of insight. Belfast has recently set up a fuck ton of student accommodation for Ulster, University of Ulster Belfast. So there could be someone that you might be interested in approaching, because I know One Top Land did do University of Ulster, whatever the name of the campus is, long from Ulster Unicorns will fucking slaughter me for forgetting it. But yeah, because it's right up the road, but it's a shithole, John, and go fuck yourself. That aside, not that he's even going to watch this because my friends don't support me. But yeah. Yeah, so one thing I did actually want to touch on, because in the Twit Longer you did say that, well, no, that's something. I do have one later for another bit of longer, but you said that you and Ruben were obviously stepping away from the day to day, and I assume that was being passed on mostly sort of to incipients. What has actually changed in the back end versus whenever you guys were 100% like only ICL?
Not much, to be honest, because when me and Ruben were 100% ICL, Incipients was also, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we kind of brought it, like had Incipients there maybe a month or two beforehand, kind of really shadowing what Ruben was doing. I'm going to be honest, it was Ruben. But Ruben kind of does a lot of the back end on ICL as is. And Incipients kind of just watched them and kind of just understood it. And, you know, a lot of ICL is logic in a sense. You kind of just it's everything is very clear if it's an admin decision, most of the time. But not much has changed really. I think Incipients and Nuncle have really stepped up to the plate, and I actually love the direction, and Retzel, of course.
Yeah.
I actually love the direction that ICL has been pushed in now by those boys, because it's there at certain times there's never not games. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and especially with the introduction of Valorant, which is probably something we could just jump straight into. I know it's been very, very, very explosive and very quick. The moment Valorant, it was like, oh lads, I know we don't play Valorant, but hop on, we'll try this out, and then within less than a week, you just have a tournament potentially running for it. Do you see Valorant as something that could maybe take off? And like, obviously, it's not going to be the plan, but do you think ICL might turn into more of a Valorant entity than EireLan any day?
I don't. I see personally, if I took a step back and looked at ICL, I see ICL as a community. You know what I mean? As a community-based platform, I don't even see it as a CS thing. You know what I mean?
Okay,
It
that's
has
interesting.
its CS end, it has its Valorant end, but it also has banter. You know what I mean? I go to ICL to chat. That's just personally me. I go to ICL to chat to the boys and whatnot. Having the CS end for all the CS players is great, and having the Valorant end is also great, because I've got players I haven't seen in years who swapped to Valorant, or completely new players. I wouldn't say Valorant will take anything away from anything, because we've actually brought on 3 new guys who are just strictly Valorant players and who used to run their own scene but on a small term,
Yeah.
like, you know, custom games and stuff like that, and now they're running it from ICL. But yeah, no, I think I got lost again, but I think it's a great branch out, because it not only does it bring more people from the same area to the same place, it just makes our scene bigger.
Yeah, no, and like you laugh, but it's true. It just gets more eyes on ICL in general. And more tournaments ain't bad, because at the end of the day, there are probably some people who could play both.
Yeah,
And I'm sure there will be with the fact that the tournament's free, for fuck's sake.
yeah. I don't know if you've seen. Yeah, the free entry is just kind of to grow the scene as of now.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, we're going to try target Valorant to be the same. They run the exact same as CS. I just linked you that there. I'm not sure
challenge
if
mode.
you've seen that. Did you see what we managed to pull off there?
Yeah,
For
mate, spoiler alert, I'm casting your next 5v5 for fuck's sake.
You see how far of a step back I'm. But no, what I was saying is we have that going for Valorant now. When this ends, that'll swap over to Valorant. So the front page will swap over to Valorant. So
Oh,
we've
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
we've we're kind of given as much as we can to both. We don't want to ignore both. We don't want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna try a bit of wizardry here. Does it actually work? Cause I would bring it up to show the front page, but being in the UK, technically, I
Yeah.
I don't get it. But I have heard, for anyone who's interested, if you are in Ireland and you go on to challengermode.com, it will bring up the Irish, the ICL 5v5 will be up, and then eventually it'll be the Valorant one. This was based off a partnership I believe you had recently sort of struck up, um, pending seeing how well it goes.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's sort of on a trial run. How involved were you actually? Because that's a good one. How involved were you in bringing this over, or at least how aware were you that it was happening?
The CM, the Challenger
Yeah,
mode.
yeah, yeah.
So we have obviously our admin chats and whatnot in Discord, and because of EL, I had it taken a step back, and I was just kind of watching. So realistically, I think this was actually Incipiens and Retzal.
Yeah.
So hats off to them for pulling that off. Same as I believe we have a one shot to kill sponsor from the same guys. I
Yeah,
think it was
like
Retzal and
a Polish sponsor, I believe, is what it's a skin being given to the MVP of your next 5v5.
yeah. So that's Incipiens and Retzal doing work. I was aware of it the whole time. I was kind of giving the thumbs up, same as possibly you saw. Obviously, Aiden has his group tags. Ice Aiden has his group tags in the Discord. I was just more so giving the thumbs up because at the end of the day, I trust them. You know what I mean? If they think this is a good idea for the scene,
Yeah.
it's a good idea for the scene. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you've even said this off screen. Nothing's really happening with Ian being in the chat so far, and even if there was, I can't work magic. I wouldn't be able to force you to say anything anyway.
If
Um,
if, if I knew it.
yeah, yeah. As you
Yeah.
said, you just sort of go, yeah, go on ahead, lads. You know,
Yeah.
uh, which obviously has its benefits that you can do that now that you're running something else. So we sort of touched on EireLan with ICL, how they may or may not compete together. You
Mhm.
specified, and I asked you this off thing, and it's a fairly short answer, but I'm interested. And I don't know if anyone else will be. You specified in your tweet longer, we are in no way trying to compete with pre-existing event organizers. I wrote down here, was this to be a message to anyone in particular? And I think you sort of brushed over the
Yeah.
fact, yeah,
Yeah. So we more so put that out for individual event hosts.
yeah,
The likes of Alan, I get on really well with, and even the likes of old G series guys like McDara, Gambra, and stuff like that. We wanted to make sure we weren't stepping on toes. You know what I mean? Especially with Alan, I think we've spoken to Alan, and I think it looks like we might buy his equipment. So I'm pretty sure OTL has sailed its ship. We're gonna have a memorial and all, but yeah, no, it was more so just to avoid pissing any of the old guys off because I'm good friends with them and I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, no, and I think that's probably wise on your part because trying to get something started in a scene with people being against you is probably not the easiest. I wouldn't know, of course.
Yeah.
Um, wouldn't know anything about that. So, because like people are probably gonna notice, I'm reading my questions a lot more in this one, but I think it's because you're sort of the first person with a lot of things left unanswered.
Mm.
You know, with other people it was general concepts and stuff, but this is a lot more specific, which I personally enjoy a lot more. Um, one thing we didn't sort of write down here, but I'm sure it won't land you in any bother or anything, is how did you get involved with the UKIC? Because obviously you're a moderator over there. You were in the fucking
Yeah.
endpoint jersey as well. Oh god.
Um, yeah, that was a story. Originally, so not too long ago, it was announced publicly that the rebranding that Endpoint took over. the UK circuit.
Yeah.
They have always been contracted actually to do England, Ireland, and Iceland, believe it or not. But it wasn't extreme public knowledge
Yeah.
before. It was kind of just contracted and nobody mentioned anything because UK scene is they just wanted to host their own. But not too long, I can't remember, maybe it was a month or two ago, it went public. And they changed their banners, they changed all this stuff. So I contacted Pete, which is Endpoint Pete.
Yeah.
And basically just said, like, look, we've been running this hub since 2016. We really have a strong scene. It might not be big, but it's a lot of
Loyal.
strong lads who, yeah, exactly that. What can we do to kind of incorporate the scene and grow us as a scene alongside you guys? Then Pete brought me on as kind of an Irish representative, in a sense to kind of, we had the possibility to hand over, the way UK Hub is subscription based.
Yes.
So he gave me the opportunity to have, prizes as entries, month subs, 3 month subs and whatnot. I was like, okay, that's all right. Then he kind of just pointed me because he's a businessman. I mean,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
run Endpoint himself. He pointed me in the right direction of, going LLC or whatever, LTD, I think it is in Ireland, and how to contact sponsors and all this stuff. And I will be honest, I put the info onto the boys, but I do think the sponsors that we've got now is just surely out of their own hard work. But
Yeah.
set us in the right direction anyway. After that, they were honestly just looking for staff members, and I was like, well, look, I'm already in all your meetings, so when I play your hub and I'm in your meetings, so why not? Let me help you boys as I help my guys. So that means anything you do right, we can also do right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you think, and again, just tell me to shut up, but do you think that there is any community, because obviously there was a bit of community backlash against UKIC whenever the announcement dropped. I've heard from behind the scenes that the UK hub, didn't even really have much of an idea. Whenever at least the rebrand was being talked about and whenever all the discussions were put into motion, I think ICL might even have still not been around. It might have still been in its dead or like on the off season, as you
So to
put it.
speak, yeah. I was talking. So there's for all the hub organizers and partners for Face and whatnot, there's a Discord.
Yeah.
And I spoke about it in the Discord that, like, we have been somewhat active and we've always been here. We've been here years. Pete actually messaged me and apologized for, like, he didn't want it to look like their scene was just, okay, this is
An
ours now.
English invasion, some may put it.
Yeah, so a lot of people put it. But he apologized to me. He was like, he genuinely meant it. And yeah, I've lost my trail of thoughts here. But I will say, I think he didn't mean for it to look in a certain direction.
Yeah.
I just think a lot of people have a stigma towards certain players, and those players have a certain stigma towards our players. And I think if the scene really wanted to better itself, in a sense, like, this is not something an organizer could do. It is the scene itself. If people could realize coming together as a scene, because reasonably against, like, Europe, because Europe is a scene, because
Yeah.
obviously connected. NA is a scene. UK Ireland should be a scene, but are not, in a sense. You know what I mean? So I think if people could realize that, for the greater of our small scene and their medium-sized scene, to make them the same thing would be really beneficial in a sense.
Yeah. No, I agree with you to a certain extent, because previously we've talked about like with other people, talked about potentially null. If they for anyone who's not aware of the UK University League, because obviously they operate with Queen's University and Ulster up here in the north. We had talked about previously, would teams even be bothered if Null opened it up to Irish people? Would they even be bothered competing, because it wouldn't be as easy, or it wouldn't be the lads that they know? By the way, just for clarification, Null don't have any interest in sorting out Ireland. When I asked them about it, they said, "Did you not know there's already a league in Ireland? Here is the Irish Challenge, or Irish Collegiate Esports," and that conversation went nowhere. So there'll be a couple of people who sad about that. You probably don't give much of a fuck, like, but
I don't go to college, so it's a throw up for me. But I will say, to add on to what I said before, is I in no way would like to kind of like combine the two scenes and just end off.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I think if players could be more open-minded to playing with UK players and vice versa, it would better the scene in the sense that we would still have ICL, you know what I mean? We
Yeah,
would still have the boys, but if for the likes of UMX, I think I touched on them earlier, that is a 3-2 lineup. So it's 2 Irish or 3 Irish, depending on the sub, I believe.
yeah, I think
Because
that.
there was one guy who was subbed in and subbed out. He was Irish and then swapped for UK, and the other guys are UK.
Yeah,
See how far they've gone. You know what I mean? And not to talk down, I'm running an Irish lineup myself, but it statistically doesn't go as far anymore. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And I think if people really want to better the CS scene and put a name out there for the Irish lads, I don't see it as a negative thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it kind of touches on us speaking. People are a little bit patriotic earlier, and
Mm-hmm.
I know some of your admins probably were quite upset as well. I saw some people in a Twitter thread going back and forth, but it is sort of, I think it's the idea of, we've put hard work into this and,
Yeah,
weren't even consulted, but I think maybe people don't realize that decisions like this aren't made in the span of a month when, oh God, ICL actually has like, constant games every night. It's sort of months ahead. And even people who knew about ICL, it mightn't have been kicking off as much as it is now.
yeah. And to put it out there, I made no decisions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What happened, and it had nothing to do with me. And I tried to kind of get on board with Pete and see, or not Pete specifically, but the UK IC guys in
Yeah.
general, and just talk to them about, we have a scene here, and what's going on is a bit. It is not disrespectful in a way, but it's a bit like, it's a bit strange to us because them representing Ireland and all the Irish lads are sat here like, well, okay, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's a bit of a weird one to talk about, but I made no decisions in that part. You know what I mean? It happened, and that's the way it was. So
Yeah, I think they
yeah,
could probably feel definitely left out. Obviously, I believe the one higher profile Irish scene member who was involved, maybe not involved, but I find it hard to believe he wasn't consulted, and maybe he can tell me differently whenever I talk to him. But obviously, Tobin was somewhat, because he's in Endpoint, and I had heard from behind the scenes he might have at least been slightly consulted or had known that the talks were going on when they were going on. And that's how I know stuff moves slow. You know what I mean? It takes a while for these
hmm
decisions to get made. I think people maybe shouldn't be as quick to jump it to anger, because I have seen some discussions on ICL doesn't affect ELO. It doesn't need a subscription. These are things that would be necessary if you were the official hub of Ireland. Faceit
exactly.
aren't going to give you that partnership if it's free. Like, if your hub is free and you don't make them money, at the end of the
hmm
day, player numbers aren't everything. They help you get sponsors. They don't help you make a lot of money, like pure profit.
Yeah, that's actually really going to touch on because like ICL is a no elo free hub, and it comes back to the sense where I see ICL as a community,
Yeah,
and it would be really nice to have, and I won't lie, it'd be lovely to have that Irish representation on Faceit. But we are a community, we're not a business. You know what I
yeah,
mean? At Endpoint are a business. And if they are, they have actually always been legally contracted to cover Ireland and Iceland, which is
yeah.
wild. But yeah, that's it. I see it as a community, and if we happen to make ground within the next year, so be it. But if we don't, I think everybody in the scene is happy as is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Although, to touch on Iceland obviously being included in the three, made Iceland so small. I heard they have an app that actually can tell you secretly if this random person is related to you in some way, shape, or form. So that goes to tell you. And I'm from the north where we have fucking bush mills where everyone's related to each other up here.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I feel like that was definitely something kind of important to touch on. Because obviously, if I just want to check this here, yeah, your tag in ICL obviously is owner, but then you have that little note beside that says UKIC moderator. So I felt
Yeah.
like it was something quite important to touch on.
I for that I wanted to make it clear that people know that I'm representing both, and I
Yeah,
want to like realistically, I'm not trying to be up on my high horse, but I want to be the bridge. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
do. Because it's what I'm not going to force any decisions ever. You know what I mean? If the boys don't want it, and it's a community decision, fair means. But if I could be the bridge to like the likes of Dragsy and the likes of that, I'd love it to see those type of boys prosper. Now, not everybody has to do their own thing. People can play for fun.
Yeah.
But the few lads that do want to go up and really try, I happily just, help them on over type thing.
Yeah. Out of interest, has anyone reached out to you before to get info on the UKIC hub or just?
Dragsy did, yeah.
Oh shit, yeah.
So Dragsy, streams
Yeah,
on
yeah.
and off. We kind of hooked Dragsy up with a streamer code. The streamer code is basically, I think it is a 3-month subscription to UKIC. And that was kind of an offer from Pete being like, look, Irish player, streamer, there's somewhat value there.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then he went on to do fucking great things. He's been in PL qualifiers twice now, as I said. So that's the Dragsy is the ideal player.
Mate, if he was the fucking average player as well, we wouldn't need any UK help to make like a HLTV team, But
Yeah.
no, that's good. And obviously, Traxy has recently been signed as an official streamer for an organization, which like it's good to know that at least some good's coming of the don't want to say competition because as you said you aren't looking
Yeah.
to do the same thing, but it's good to
Yeah.
know that something positive has come out of it for an Irish player. Now obviously I know a couple of people might take umbrage with that being held up as the example because it is in my opinion the exception, not the rule. No, but just in terms of like people finding a lot of success from that, you probably have a different opinion on that.
No, I'm just curious. I got lost there. As in umbrage, did you say? Sorry,
Yeah,
my
yeah, no,
line.
no, no. They might, mate. There's a webcam in front of me. I stream my fucking consciousness to this, and that's about the height of it. Oh yeah, they might take umbrage if I sit here and say like, obviously, Dragsy's a great example. As someone who's been able to transition across, but I want to make it clear, yeah, he is like the exception, due to like he's quite skillful.
Yeah,
And that goes a long way. Obviously, I don't want to pretend that he will be the experience of most people who cross
yeah,
over.
exactly. Now, I don't. This isn't. I'm not going to have an interview about UKIC
Yeah,
here, but I
yeah,
would
yeah.
like to say that if there were people in ICL who were not, not level 10 and what, like level 7, even level down to level 3, there is a plan for that. There's a path for that. Like, so the UKC run a path to pro, which is basically, you start in silver,
Yeah.
you move up, move up, move up, and then you're up. You're playing with, you know what I mean? It's a good experience personally, and I think they've hit the nail on the head with the academy type stuff, and it's a good in that the Irish guys have been allowed, not allowed. That's a terrible choice, but it's a good in that the Irish lads have been given. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I just think it's a good path
No,
for.
that's yeah, as I said, I think it's important to touch on. Not to, if anyone accuses me of being a shill, I turn down every offer I get unless it benefits me to the highest extent.
Businessman.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing I want to touch on, yeah. Well, no, you've already kind of answered. I was gonna ask, what do you guys plan on doing better or the same as One Tap? But you've already said like just a higher production overall, which I think is quite important because we're definitely looking to do that for your guys' 5v5, which is one thing I will actually say I quite like about ICL is it's very not hands it's very hands off on the way that we as in casters have just been given here's your tag, here's the code to do the ICL Twitch, just fucking do what you want, and we're looking to put a better production together for it almost.
Yeah, well, that's something I touched on early in ICL was like, it's community,
Yeah,
and a lot of the work, like our admins are volunteers, you know what I mean? And for to likes of casters, if anybody's willing, it's a real big favor to us. So there's no pressure, there's no work there for you. It's just, do your art form and we'll appreciate you in
yeah.
a sense.
Although if anyone does start to feel pressure, blame it on me and Evan, because in our episode we talked about there's lots of shit that could be done better. I did like, I appreciate the community feel of it all, but in the 5v5 before this one coming up, no, it was the one before the last one, sorry,
Yes,
where
yeah,
I tuned in, I watched the VODs because I did that write up for your guys' website, and I
yeah,
watched the VODs and it was like, they were chatting doing the pre-show segment, but it literally just had like the names of the teams, and it was very poorly zoomed in on the graphic that you guys had made, and I pretty much said to Evan, that was a load of shite, like. But I get what you guys are going for.
I I do think now the format of the next 5v5, I could be wrong, but it's either the next 5v4, the one that you're talking about, or the one coming up after that. The
Ooh.
caster format is going to be different. Now, I don't know if Evan spoke to you about it. But it looks like we're gonna. Okay, I don't know if I can say this because I saw it in the chat one day.
If has it been discussed in the caster chat within the last week or
I
two?
believe so, yeah.
Yeah, no, we put that together, I think, a couple of days ago. Me, Evan, and Kevin jumped into fuck that's a hell as well. Evan and Kevin. I already told them I fucking hate that. But yeah, no, we put all that together, and like hopefully it'll be a good thing, and hopefully there'll be elements that we bring, or at least that we try to bring, that can maybe make its way onto EL. Not putting you under pressure or anything. But
No, I definitely think so. Yeah, like I think the likes of you three putting that together, I think it brings a lot nicer of a feel. You know what I mean? To it, professional.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that ends up actually going. So one thing I want to ask was, we've kind of went over a little bit, I suppose. Mate, you're fucking killing all my future questions. I was gonna ask what's the main thing the scene needs, but we've kind of touched on like just having a route to a bigger
I think his
publicity.
one word is consistency as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember the last LAN, and well, I do, but I don't remember when it was, and the one before that, God knows. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think consistency is nice.
Oh god, I had another fucking thing come to mind, but I've just completely forgotten about it. Yeah, actually, this might be self-explanatory, but whenever you guys are looking to do EireLan in the future, I imagine will you want to have a lot more control about how things go? Because obviously, if I see out the moment, you're quite hands off in the decision making, but even whenever it comes to the broadcast, as we just touched on, we're allowed to run sort of rampant. How much of a handle will you guys have on everything?
I think for a business sake of EL, like business standpoint of view, we'll have a lot more of a handle on it. We have a lot of plans to try to incorporate into the LAN weekend. We'll also be running, most likely the weekend previous, we'll be running a test LAN, me and Ruben. So everything would go smooth. I think broadcast term, like we will set up the area. I'm not going to tell the casters how to do their job because then I'd be a caster. But yeah, no, I think the one thing, and this is not meant to come across in a bad way whatsoever to the previous LANs, but I think the one thing that they missed out on, or one of the things they missed out on, was live game admins never seemed to be like extremely knowledgeable about the way 5v5 Team CS worked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's what we have going for us, because we do within our staff team already, we do have a decent amount of high level players. And when I say high level, I mean like, face Elo 2200 to 3K.
Yeah.
I think that's what we've got going for us, is that we've got a lot of experience between the whole team. So personally, me and Ruben, Ruben's going to be a lot of tech. I'm going to be, quote unquote, front of house, talking to people. And we will have floor admins who are live refs basically for games with a lot of CS experience. And I think that will bring a whole new feel to, game pauses, server crashes, which is a common occurrence in Irish LAN history.
Oh, definitely. So, do you think though, quickly touching on that, do you think you run the risk though of people choosing to play instead of adminning for these LAN events? Because I know with your online events, people can't do the same. People like Retzel can jump in because they sort of run themselves a lot better online than they do on LAN. But do you think, like, obviously Incipient's being head admin for ICL, I imagine, maybe, you don't have to say yes or no, but he could be involved in some way, or maybe he isn't. But if we were to use him as an example, if someone like him was to be an admin also with EireLan, he's also quite a good CS player. Do you foresee any problems with people choosing to play instead of helping you guys out?
So two points, and that is I've actually been contacted by a few quote unquote old heads
Yeah.
who were around in my like 2014 days. You know what I mean? Who would be like, I don't play that much CS anymore to that level, but I know myself that they have always been very good and knowledgeable players, and they have actually offered, their weekends to land for us.
Yeah.
The way I would personally do it, my other point, the way I would personally do it with my staff team wanting to play is maybe a 3-month meeting.
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, Ginger, you want to play. Incipiens, you want to play. So go prac. You know what I mean? And they would take a step back, and the rest of the admins we'd fill in and do whatnot. So there'd be no problems in that area, so to speak. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, I think that's quite important because as you said that was the only problem I could foresee with having such high level players, because that is something that happens at the moment. But I suppose you have that space where it can happen when it's online.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I unless there's anything you really want to talk about, or is there's anybody to shout out or anything like that?
I was told to say Quam, and that is about it. There was one person who forced me to say their name. So
Oh, for fuck's sake,
Quam
mate.
Q.
Yeah. Okay, if you, mate, you've snuck your way onto the show then through getting someone else to say your name. Don't even approach me asking to get on this show. It's not gonna happen.
No.
Call that an ego, call it whatever the fuck you want. But I've already I've not turned down certain people. I've just made it abundantly clear, if they can't take a hint. But anyway, yeah,
There's one point I'd like to leave it off on.
yeah,
Well, not leave it off on, but mention to do with EL and ICLN and whatever that comes in the future from us is we're going to start doing kind of not consistent but reasonably well notified streams,
okay,
um, Q&A streams, maybe a giveaway or two. You know what I mean? So if anybody does have questions about EL or lands to come after this godforsaken lockdown, we'll put out a Twitter post about streaming and Q&As, all that stuff coming pretty soon. I'd like to.
Out of interest, is that slightly based off? I don't know if you watch Flashpoint or anything, but I knew they used to
So
do it's a CS tournament organizer. They would do every Tuesday. They would get two players on from the league, and obviously two hosts, and they would answer questions and stuff. It's honest. Obviously, if you haven't heard of them, then
funnily enough, if you play Rust, the dev blog do a stream every Tuesday. So that's
okay.
kind of
Tuesday seems to be a good day then.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
No,
day, yeah.
that will actually be quite interesting. I'm glad that for breaking news sort of shit. Although this is probably coming out on Sunday, but you know yourself.
We'll
No,
save the Twitter
thank
post.
yeah. I appreciate it because you guys reached out to me through the official Twitter account, which made me feel very, made me feel important. So, I appreciate it definitely for you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a very nice platform to get information out on, and it's nice having a chat as well. To be fair.
Yeah, because we probably have most of the same audience, but it's good to get because people can't explain themselves, and that's probably where a lot of bad opinions get formed. You know.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice to be in on a chat about something rather than a tweet longer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. But just if anyone's still watching, it's usually in an argument who writes the first tweet longer is usually at fault. I'll
Yep.
just let that stew for anyone who's watching who that may be targeted at. But yeah, no, thanks for coming on. I will end it here. I fucking hate outros, so goodbye.